nature has a way of reclaiming its own. And that's what's happening here. And so, in order for you to see it and remember somebody, or get to know somebody, it's important to be able to see it. It's the old ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In this case, it's ashes to ashes and grass all over the top of it. But we can make it look nice. If you didn't see the video before, I posted one on this page, or wherever you're watching it, probably on the same page, just a little while ago. Today's Wednesday. What is the date? 26th? I can't tell the date. 27? Anyway, it's Wednesday. Yeah, it's the 27th. Because tomorrow, Thursday, is the 28th, and that's what we'll talk a little bit about here after we get Papa's gravestone a little bit more visible. Papa was a tremendous, tremendous person and a great friend. I'll tell you a little bit about him in a bit. Fritz is here beside me. He's rolling in the grass, loving it. He says, we need to come here more often. That's really the truth. What people really need to do is come to visit people when they can still talk to you, not just the memories of their talking. But what happens is people vanish without us realizing it, and there's nobody I've ever met that doesn't regret that they didn't talk to a loved one more before they moved on to the next world, wherever that may be. And we all, I did it myself, my own grandmother, my grandfather, both sets actually, and what I could have learned from them. My grandfather that fought in World War I, he died in 1959, but I know if I could do anything to go back and ask him questions about World War I and General Pershing and what it was like driving an ambulance and being a medic in the infantry over in Belgium and France and all that stuff. Looks a little bit better. I can't read the Chinese characters, but Shuzi Li, that was my father-in-law, and he's an amazing guy. But I want to tell you about something that, you know, talk about the length of time and how you measure time. This is really amazing thing right here. You see this right here? This hyphen right here? This is the longest line that I know of. It's the longest line, at least in time. Because what it does is it bridges February 5th, 1926 to September 13, 2013. And inside this hyphen here, inside this dash, are more memories than you could even imagine. Impossible to capture them all, but when he passed, this line here represents everything that he knew, everything he experienced, everything that he loved, everything that he struggled with, every victory, every defeat, every dream, every hope, every memories of every person he ever knew, and all of the feelings and emotions that go with it. Somewhere between February 5th, 1926 and September 13, 2013. Friday the 13th, I'll never forget it. But I was wise enough to approach him several years before he left this world with a new camera that I had, a new video camera, and I asked him if I could sit down and talk about his life, and he said, "Why would you want to talk about that? I have nothing to tell you," which is what everyone says. Or people say that about their own family members. Oh, my father doesn't have anything to say. He has no great stories or whatever. But everybody has a great story. Let me just tell you one of his stories that's remarkable. When I met him, well, I'll tell two stories. One was how I first met him. I was dating my wife. She was visiting from China, and her brother had rented her a little house behind another house in Eagle Rock. And so even though she didn't speak very good English, we would communicate about when I could see her again, and we'd map it all out. So at a certain time on a certain evening, she knew that I would be there waiting outside. The people in the front of the house and customs and all that stuff would not allow man who's not a husband or something, or a brother, to go back to that house. So I waited in my car, and I was always waiting because I'd be watching for her to come out of this little house behind the fence in the backyard. And I wouldn't see her. Then all of a sudden I would see her walking up the street from the bus stop. She was always traveling around. And so it was common for me to stand there. And I would notice this one gentleman walking on crutches that would slowly walk up the street and walk down the street. And he just became a regular sight while I was waiting for my future wife to come back so we could go off and do something, and use hand gestures to communicate and all that stuff. Well, anyway, one day, she's typically late all the time, and but I was there, and when she arrived, this same little man walking by, a Chinese man, with his crutches, hobbling down the street, and when my future wife walked up to me, I said, "Hello, how are you?" And she says, "I'm fine." Then she pointed at him. She said, "That's my father." "No way, that's your father?" So I chased him down and and introduced myself. And just the nicest man ever. He said to me, one of the first things he said was, "My son let me read one of the books that you wrote, and in it you wrote something very interesting. You wrote, 'Virtue, though in rags, will keep me warm.'" I thought, how interesting that he would remember some statement I made in the introduction to one of my books. He says, "Does that mean you won't be able to support my daughter if you guys get married?" And I thought that was wonderful. It was just, and very observant as well. But anyway, I would come to know him very, very well. And he was hobbling on crutches because he had lost his leg. And that's the story that is one of the best stories that came out of this oral history interview that I would do with him later. He hated the revolutionary Red Army that was coming their way, and tried everything in his power to escape the little city of Qingdao on the coast of China where he lived. He wanted to escape because he just couldn't bear living under the communist rule. One of his friends was an Air Force pilot of some sort and promised to come and pick him up, fly into Qingdao and pick him up. Pardon the sneeze. And they could escape to Taiwan or somewhere else. And so he waited at the airport as the Red Army's approaching. But unfortunately, the plane never arrived. The guy couldn't make it over there. And so my future father-in-law, was stuck there, tortured, living in a place that he didn't want to, well, a place he wanted to live, but not under the regime of Mao Zedong and the communists. And so he endured that, and he was an educated man, an engineer. And, he endured and stayed until I'm trying to think what year it was he came here, early 2000s, that finally he and his wife moved to California and got to live near us. That's how I would get to know him. But what was interesting was how he learned about the death of Mao Zedong. Now, keep in mind that in China, they communist China, they would not let you listen to any other media of any kind except the state-sponsored stuff, which is, of course, all propaganda. But he secretly and very illegally listened to BBC radio. He was listening to BBC, and if he would have been caught listening to that, he could have been thrown in jail. But he was listening to it, and it was several weeks after Mao Zedong had died, and they had kept it secret from all the people in China. But he heard a report on BBC that made reference to Mao Zedong having died a couple of weeks earlier, and Shuzi Li was elated. It was the happiest day of his life, the happiest day of his life that would turn into one of the most horrible days of his life. The reason is that his first thought was to contact one of his friends and to call him on the phone to tell him that the great news that this horrible leader had died. But of course, Shuzi Li knew that the phones were tapped and he could not possibly risk doing that. So instead he got on his bicycle. And he was pedaling across Qingdao as fast as he could to spread the good news to his friend. And a truck hit him. and ran right over him on his bicycle. And as a result, he would lose his leg and be in the hospital for a long, long time and be unable to work anymore. So the greatest day of his life became the worst day of his life because of losing his leg and his mobility. When he came to California, he's educated, so he spoke Mandarin, which is what they teach in the schools in China. But he moved into an apartment in Chinatown where most of the people living there over the years were people who did not speak Mandarin, they spoke Cantonese. So basically he had very few people to talk to. And I mentioned earlier in a post that the older you get, the fewer people around that will talk to you and listen to you, even more importantly. So he would spend his time walking along, getting lots of exercise on his artificial leg with his crutches, not speaking to many people at all. So when I was able to get him to sit down and prompt him to speak, I was able to hear stories that the family hadn't heard and that are now preserved forever. He was indeed a library that was burning down. And everybody here, I'm going to probably pick the camera up and see if I can gently move us because you've seen him enough. But I'm going to try to lift the camera up without being too disruptive here so we can get a better view of where we are here at Forest Lawn in Hollywood Hills. And just a second, I'm going to tilt it up a bit. And then I'm going to move over to where we get in the shade so Fritz doesn't have to be out in the sun like this. So I'm hoping you can see this. I cannot see the screen, but this is Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills, looking off to the west toward the West Valley and Toluca Lake area. And then we cross over to where you can see the hills back there above Sylmar, if you can see that at all. Like I say, I cannot see it. And then North Hollywood area, Sun Valley, and then the beginning of the foothill range, which you see moving up to the right there. That's where the fire was. It burned from one side of those hills, one end of it, all the way down out of view of what you see over there to the other side. So that was some fire. That was just a couple weeks ago. We're going to move over here and step over the resting place of other people. And these people, I wonder if they were able to tell their stories before their libraries burned down. And I'm thinking that maybe not. But this is a sad part. These people, many of them left the world, at least in the form they were in. And how many of them, I wonder, wished that somebody had talked to them and listened to them, wished they could pass along their wisdom to somebody. Some people have families that are very careful about keeping their gravestones looking good. This is polished and looks like it's even oiled. Lusik, she's from Armenia, and well, she's Armenian anyway, may not have been from Armenia, but she died in 2013, a little bit before my father-in-law died. People from all walks of life are here. We're going to go under this tree here where we can talk a little bit. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see me well, but I'm not important to be seen. So I'm just going to put it here. I'll try putting it up here. If I tilt it down a little bit, hold on a moment here. Because I just want to mention how you yourself can, all right, I'm going to assume that I can get in this picture and, well, maybe not because I got this long cord, the short cord. I'm just going to let you see the cemetery while I finish talking. This is Don Ray, of course, and I'm at Forest Lawn Cemetery live, and we just went to the grave of my father-in-law, Shuzi Li, who died several years back on Friday the 13th. But before he died, I was able to capture his memories and recollections in a video oral history that he was reluctant to do and didn't understand why. But now we have his legacy on tape, and so people can see him. Look at that, the great shot of Fritz. Why don't we get down where we can watch Fritz a little bit? I'm going to lower this down a bit. So anyway, it was something that I'm glad I did. Also somewhere, I can't point to it exactly, but my mother was also buried here. And before she was not able to talk anymore, I was able to arrange with a friend to do her oral history interview. See, the thing is that I don't think it's a good idea for people to do an interview with their own family member. And the reason is that in my case, my mother would have baby talk to me, because every time she talked to me it was baby talk. And then she would have also not told stories that she believed I already knew. So she'd say, well, you know how Uncle Lee is, and you remember how, great granddad was with the candy. And to a stranger, she'll have to tell the whole story. So I had my former student, great friend, now fellow board member David Ritchie do the interview. And I shot it with a big old camera that I had, but I put headphones on and listened to my Latin music while she spoke, and I never heard a thing. It didn't take her long for her to realize that I couldn't hear her. She died about a year later. I never looked at the interview until a year after she died, which is 2 years later. And I was finally ready to watch it, and I was astounded at the stuff that I learned that I never would have learned about her had I done the interview myself. And so it was the greatest gift I ever gave my sister and other family members for Christmas. That after my mother had passed away and a year had passed, was an edited video, and included my mother's songs that she loved, tons of photographs of her at all ages and the people close to her, and family movies and some video, all together that let her tell her life story. And it turns out there was a theme in it. I can post this for you if you wish to watch it, but it was, I think we called it Doris at the Wheel, because there was always a theme about her driving cars. You'll have to watch it sometime. If you're interested, just tell me you're interested, and then I'll make it possible. But anyway, so here's what I want to talk to you about, is that tomorrow night, Thursday night, September 28th, I'm going to do the Storytime Thursdays with Don Ray, and I realized that what I really wish to do is to just give the talk about how to empower you yourself to accomplish getting an oral history made of somebody in your life whose library is burning down. You have to move fast. So what I'm going to do is teach you how, since I'm learning the technology of the smartphone, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to be able to shoot it without going to a lot of expense, and tell you about some of the ways that I've learned about approaching it to get people talking, and to keep them talking and have your talking be at a minimum, and let them just take off anywhere they want to go with their stories. It's going to be worthwhile. So I won't drag this on much longer. The event starts at 7 p.m. Thursday, that's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. September 28th. That's Pacific time, and you can watch it from if I can do it, I'm going to broadcast it from the page Storytime Thursdays with Don Ray. I've been sort of restricted from Facebook from over promoting stuff, so if it's not there, it will be on the Don Ray page, but I'm sure you'll find it. And then we'll go live there. It's going to be at the Villa Terrazza restaurant, which was once the old Vienna Gardens restaurant, the topic of the project we're working on, called The Spy of Shadow Hills, Rumors or Reality. And we do it outside in a patio there, and I've got a nice little light that keeps whoever's on camera lighted up. And it starts at 7 p.m. and you can come there for free. Come there and watch it in person. It makes it a lot better. Might even be able to get some interesting questions from people, or have them actually try to do some of the interviews using the tips that I made. And you'll see how they work, and I think you'll find it interesting. So that's tomorrow, Thursday, September 28, 2017, at the Villa Terrazza restaurant. The address is 9955 Sunland Boulevard in Shadow Hills, California, which is right between Sunland and Sun Valley, right over the hill from Burbank a little bit. Come there. Come a bit early if you want to order some food. There's going to be a server who can come outside and serve you some food. You might want to start early. That's not free, unfortunately. I wish I could do that. Wouldn't that be cool? If it's so successful that the restaurant would donate the meals to everybody. But that's wishful thinking. I'm trying to put my back to the wind in case you're getting wind noise on this. So I would love it if you could come. And also, if anybody whatsoever says post it, please, I will post the oral history interview of my mother from YouTube, and you can watch it. You'll find it quite interesting. Her great story is about almost losing her arm after an infection that she had, and how a bicycle is what saved her life. It's an amazing story that's part of that oral history. But for now, I'm going to turn this thing off. Thank you all for tuning in. If before you go, if you see a tab somewhere at the top or the bottom that says either subscribe or join or get notified or follow, any of those things, tap on that, and I believe that you'll get a notice when I go live at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. Give me any feedback you want, and I do hope that one or two of you will make the trip to 9955 Sunland Boulevard tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Thursday, September 28, 2017, or tune in live. And if you do, you can. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. It's going to be one of the more interesting talks that we give. And if you need to reach me, you can also reach me at donray@donray.com, DONRAY @DONRAY.com. My phone number is area code 760-900-1735. 760-900-1735. Also, my Facebook page that I'm at least shooting this on right now is this Don Ray Media page. If you're not, if you haven't liked the page already or made a friend of me, make me a friend. And if you want to make sure you get these messages, go to the options under friend and click, good friend or something like that. And that way you'll get more notices. I promise not to be too disgusting. So what I'll do is I'll give you one last look at the beautiful area here. If we stayed a little bit longer, you would watch the deer come out, and they're beautiful. They come here to eat the flowers. But it's a beautiful, peaceful place. It's very quiet and serene. You can almost look down on where we live, and you can't bring your own dog unless it's a service dog. So Fritz is there just for that purpose. And I thank you all very, very much. I can't read the things that you're writing right now, but I'll read them in a minute. And I thank you very much. See you tomorrow night.